and I would just talk to him and just, Ed, how do you have so much estrogen in the home? Just what do you do? And he was just kind of like my coach, you know. We would just talk, and we'd always have some good laughs just around that. And so right now we're going to hear from Ed's 3 daughters, Jennifer Starud, Francie Gonzalez, and Jamie Boldovich. And they're going to come up and share about their father. And you know, one thing I've seen and just kind of observed and learned, your parent is your parent. It doesn't matter how old you get. Dad is dad, mom is mom. You're still dad's little man, you're still dad and mom's little girl, and it just doesn't matter your age. Your parents are very, very special people. We're going to do some special things from Ed's daughters right now. Jennifer.
Well, it's a bummer getting old because you need these things. I'm Jennifer. I'm Ed and Johnny's oldest, and I am going to share with you some things that you may not have known about my father. I wanted to share some things about my dad's life and about his childhood. He was born in, as you know, August 28, 1938 in El Paso, Texas, to Floyd and Mary Harris, a cook and a housewife. He had one sister, my Aunt Florence. And if you talk to my dad about his childhood, he would honestly say he doesn't remember his childhood before age 7, because at age 7 he lost his dad tragically, died of cancer. And my dad, I think he just shut that time off before he was 7. They were very, very poor. They lived in a motel of sorts with a restroom down the hallway. And it's just a really, really, really hard time. After that, my grandma, who, a lot of you knew my grandmother, she secured a position with Ma Bell as a phone operator. She had no work experience at all at this point. And she would tuck her 7-year-old and 9-year-old in bed at night, and she would go off to work, and she would, the good old-fashioned operator, the kind that you talk, you know, you literally talk to her and put you on the phone with someone else. So she would tuck him in at night, she would go to work, and then she'd come home in time to give him breakfast and get him off to school and get a little bit of sleep herself. And one of the people in the church rented him a converted garage, and that's where they lived growing up. My dad, and that took a lot of courage. I mean, we're talking 1945. She was quite a courageous woman and a woman of faith. Around 12, my dad, being who he was with his work ethic, he's like, he's going to help. So he went out and he got all these paper routes, and he started delivering papers all over El Paso. And Aunt Florence would do little odds and ends jobs as well to help take care of them. And this is when my dad learned to cook. And if you knew my dad, he was a great cook. He loved to cook. He also was very domesticated. He could wash, take care of everything. I mean, he was on his own. And my father had a rock solid faith because of my grandmother, but not just because of my grandmother, but because he saw the faithfulness of God in his life and providing for his family through those really rough times. Our father had, to understand a little bit about that, and this is sort of a funny story I want to tell you, because believe me, my dad was no saint. He hit his teenage years, and with this part of this paper route money, he bought himself a hot rod, bought himself a car in high school. And he would stay out till all hours of the night, you know, and my grandma was 5 feet tall, and she was very, very soft-spoken, and she was just very quiet person. And so Dad would get in at all hours of the night, and my grandma, there she would be, kneeling down, literally kneeling down, praying. And he would walk in, and she would get up, and she would walk over, and she would say, "Glad you're home safe, son. Good night." Talk about guilt. Horrible guilt. So I asked her one time, I said, Grandma, you know, she never ranted and raved. My dad was like that too. And she said, what was I going to do? Because he was 6'2", and, a young man. So all I could do was pray the blood of the protection over him, and I knew. She said, I knew that God would take care of it. She said, plus, I have a promise. Proverbs 22:6. Train up a child in the way he should go, and when he is old, he will not depart from it. Dad didn't have a chance. And upon returning one of those really late nights, he picked up her Bible and opened up to Jeremiah 1:5. Before I formed thee in the belly, I knew thee, and before thou camest forth out of the womb, I sanctified thee. That was the turning point for my dad. He then dedicated his life to the Lord, and he decided to go to IBC after college, which is the International Bible College in San Antonio. He met three very, very important people in his life there. My mom, Johnny DeLatte from Louisiana, my Uncle Joe Rowe, which would be his future brother-in-law, and his pastor and mentor, Pastor Schock, who had a church here in Long Beach, California. About a year into IBC, he decided he would move to California and start attending the church in Long Beach. And it was really funny because a few months after that, he was part of the youth group, and a lot of you remember him being a part of the youth group at the old church at Bethany Chapel. And Pastor Schock went back to IBC for a conference, and he had this young woman walk up to him, and in his words, he said, this beautiful young woman walked up to me, and he said very shyly, how's that Harris doing? And that was my mom. And so he went back immediately to my dad, and he said, you better not let that go. You better go and write her a letter right now. So that started a long-distance romance between my parents, my mom being in Louisiana, my dad out here, California. So he finally, in 1959, he went back to Louisiana. He married that beautiful young woman, and they moved out to California and were attending the church. Shortly after that, first child was born here. My dad, they moved because of my mom's family. She was super homesick. They moved back to Louisiana. And then Francie was born in 1967. And then after that, due to the economy in Louisiana and everything like that, they decided to move after Hurricane Camille to the Gulf Coast. That's how my dad got involved in construction. He started doing roofs and repairing people's homes and all that good stuff. And so they returned in 1973, and then Jamie was born. And there was a standing joke, we can't move anymore, because every time we move, we have a kid. So there's no more moving. He then took his contractor's license, and he was working for Mr. Kitchens in Long Beach, El Redondo, and he became a certified kitchen designer, and he did that for years. He enjoyed it immensely. But the old saying, video killed the radio star, Home Depot killed the kitchen business, because you could do it quicker and cheaper with them. So at that point, my dad came to work for me as an administrator, human resource. He would tell people, I'm blessed. I lived long enough to work for my daughters. And my sister was working there at the time as well, and he just loved that time. He then retired in 2007 to take care of my mom, who was in the last couple of years of her fight with breast cancer. My dad would tell me he didn't have a father growing up, but he had the best father growing up. He had the Heavenly Father. And if you think about the challenges that he came from, he turned out to be an amazing man, an amazing father, grandfather to all of us. And I wanted to give you a couple examples, and a son. I wanted to give you a couple examples of that in his life. First of all, as a son, he and my aunt made a pact that they were going to, as soon as they were in a position that Grandma was going to retire, and Grandma would always live with them. And she did. She was hilarious. She would go live with them when the weather was good there. And then when the weather got really hot, because they were in Arkansas and back south, she would come out here during the summers. So we shared our grandmother until she passed. And he just loved that. He loved taking care of his mom. And then when our mom was battling her cancer, he was there for her. She called him her rock. He shot for her. He nursed her. He was her cheerleader. He was her faith cheerleader. I can't stress enough, how she felt. And then as a grandfather and a father, I mean, I have so many stories. One though stuck out to me, really stuck out to me. My mom, again, was in the final stages, and Jackie was living in Texas. And Jackie called and said, I really want to come home, Mom. And you met Eli today. Eli was little, 1 year old, and so it was going to be really hard to drive back the truck and all of this. And so my dad said, well, why don't we go get those babies? And I'm like, okay. And he had one of those converted vans, and so we took off, and he loved road trips, and he was grueling on them. He never stopped. He was nice to me this time. He made stops. And we'd take off at 3 in the morning to get through the desert, sun coming up over the desert. He loved the desert because of El Paso. And singing country music. By the way, the country music is my dad. Remember, that was for my dad. And singing to the top of our lungs and having all of those conversations that you never get to have with your dad when you get older, because you're stuck in a car with them straight for 20. It was 2 days. It was hilarious. Then we got his babies, and we came back, and they moved back at that point. I'm sorry, I'm just getting my notes here. So we got back here, and so in closing, I did want to say one other thing about my dad over the years, as far as where he was with the Lord. He served, and I was trying to think back of all the different things that my dad did. He was a youth leader, he was an usher, a Sunday school teacher, and a board member, to name a few of the things that he did. And I know he cleaned the bathrooms too, a few times. Some of the small churches we were in over the years. In closing of my part today, I wanted to read to you. I was going through trying to find all of his paperwork, because again, it happened so suddenly. We were caught off guard, and he had a little basket next to his chair that he sat in all the time with his mail. And in that basket was this tattered piece of paper. And this to me sums up my dad and how he looked at each day and how he felt. Praise, blessing, thanksgiving, love. These will solve any difficulty, tame any shrew of sickness or trouble. Start each day by saying, this is the day which Jehovah hath made. I will rejoice and be glad in it. I thank God for abundant life. I thank God for enduring love. I thank God for joy. I thank God for glorious health. I thank God for infinite supply. I have awakened to a new day. I join the birds and all created things in glorious praise and thanksgiving. Lord, I do give thee thanks for the abundance that is mine. He took us all He told us all over the last few months of his life, and I look back on it now and I know he knew something was up. But he told every one of us in turn that his life was full. He loved his family. He was surrounded by his family. But if he went home tomorrow to meet his maker, he was ready. And he told us, again, all of us in separate settings. So I'm glad you're home, Dad. Thank you.